It's me, Brooks.
Hello, and I'm Paul.
Welcome to Heal This. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how we got to the point where we were not married anymore to someone else and thought about maybe getting on a dating app or looking for someone. But we were talking about how finding each other started way before we were even thinking about looking for each other and what that looks like. The story that we're going to tell you today, we're both married to someone else. We don't know each other at all. And we are not in a very happy marriage. Let's put it that way. We are trying to figure out how to maybe work on the marriage first. Both of us were trying to do that, and that was not working out. And so then kind of the unraveling of what happened in as much of a simple way that we can convey that to you, and what was really going on in our stories simultaneously happening. Totally different story, but
Right.
yeah. So if you want to start, that's good.
Yeah. Mine, we met, she and I, not long after my divorce was final. But I had been working on, years prior. My previous marriage was not, it wasn't that it wasn't going well. There just wasn't any depth to it. There wasn't really any love involved or any sort of intimacy. So, and I look towards myself to figure out what it was that maybe I could change or what I could do better. And I really started working on that. And as you know, I got into running. I did some, physical, working on myself physically, which in turn helped myself mentally and emotionally. And I started to transform. And I was kind of like losing weight, and I was, um, becoming a different person, a better person, and kind of hoping that with that, the intimacy would come back, or just, see that I'm putting in effort and I'm really working on myself. But um, that didn't seem to turn the dial at all. And so instead of throwing up my hands and just saying, well, I guess, I'm just stuck in a loveless marriage, I just really enjoyed the part where I was getting better. And so I just kind of focused on continuing to um, do these things spiritually and emotionally and physically to make myself better. I found a lot of that, as anyone who knows me knows, in running, where I'm spending a long time, hours each week out, listening to great podcasts and things like that that continue to help me out. I also focused really hard on my business and my career, selling as much real estate as possible and doing it in a fantastic way that was fulfilling. So that's kind of, so whenever it was time, whenever the divorce actually happened, I was in a good place and I could handle it. And I looked back and said, I've been preparing for this divorce, I guess, all of this time. And I was ready to go.
Yeah.
So what about you?
Well, first I wanted to ask you something. So
Okay.
you were saying that you were spending a lot of time running and listening to podcasts.
Mhm.
And what do you remember anything in particular that you were listening to, or anything that you had like epiphanies about or thoughts about self-reflection that you were really working on yourself in that time?
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, there was a ton of epiphanies and a ton of self work. I mean, I was in a weird place. And so, just I needed like the hardcore stuff, like the inspirational stuff that people are usually just like, nobody listens to that. Nobody's believing that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going like, David Goggins and Jocko Willink, like these hardcore guys. But
Mm-hmm.
that's what I needed to break through kind of like the shell that I was in, and to really kind of like, I just needed that. It's really just elementary, mentally, like no one's come to save you,
Yep.
discipline equals freedom, like all of that stuff. Like I needed to really break it down, you know, hardcore. And I really just started having breakthroughs, running further than I had ever gone before, and like just loving it, just like really just having feeling euphoria from pushing myself and finding new levels of confidence. Like I kept saying to myself, wouldn't it be crazy? Because I started running, I couldn't run a quarter of a mile without running out of breath. And then I just kept going and kept going. And wouldn't it be crazy if I ran a 5K and then I did a 5K and then it kept ramping up. And then I ran a marathon, which everyone that runs a marathon has to tell everyone that you ran a marathon.
Heck yeah, you do.
But I kept putting goals out there for myself and using that kind of hardcore stuff that for me, it works. I know it's not for everyone, but it really pushed me uh, into new levels, and I kept just getting better and better. And my work, my career continued to ramp up, and all of that, like it kept pouring in and out to other aspects of my life, and I just became a better person overall, and I learned to balance things, which I think is a key to so many things. But I really worked on the core of who I am, and really just changed completely, and I was a different person.
Mm-hmm.
And it still didn't matter. It didn't save my marriage, but I think it saved my life, my career, and who I am as a person.
Well, all
So,
of that is a really good example of the spiral up.
right.
It's like you start working on one aspect of self and the other parts of you go, wow, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling some kind of change. I'm feeling a level up physically. And then, your spiritual self goes, oh, wow, what would it be like if I change some of these things about my habits or
Right.
listening more to my intuition and going with the knowing thing that I always
Right.
say, right? So,
And yeah, and it was really just changing habits and looking at it like I had some bad habits, and let me just work on making good habits. Then I don't have the room for the bad ones. Like I start working on these certain aspects, and to hit these goals that I have to hit, I can't do this anymore. I can't be that guy anymore. And so I just had non-negotiable goals, and the only way to do that was through discipline and to cut out the bad habits. And then all these good habits just started compounding. It's kind of like the James Clear, the atomic habits. Like, you just keep stacking good things on top of each other, and it just changed me over time.
and it probably changed the way you felt about yourself too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, a ton more self-confidence. I took accountability for the things that I was doing wrong, took
Sure.
ownership of those, and so it made me um, really proud of myself, and also continuing to see like there's undeniable levels of belief that you can have, and you can reach these things. I mean, just crazy looking back at where I started, who I was, and who I was when I came out of my divorce. I
Sure.
was, I think a lot of guys or people just come out of their divorce and they crumble. And I had built myself up where my mindset, I've told a ton of people this, that the divorce was happening for me. It wasn't happening to me. And that changed my perspective. It prepared me more. I've been preparing for you and preparing for someone to be a better person for a long time. So I was ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, it did happen that way. Um, well, as far as for me, so I was married about almost 23 years, 22 and a half years with, so, um, but together before that, and 4 kids, and had never worked outside of the home. And, I had a degree, but I didn't have anything I could do really that would bring in income. And, it was a very difficult relationship. It wasn't one of those things where there were ups and downs. It was like not very good. And then every once in a while we would be like, oh, great, we're not fighting. That's nice.
Yeah.
So it just got to a point where it was like, I also had my parents pass away and I had fourth baby. And so it's like there were a lot of changes
Hmm.
in my life, and having some really big spiritual experiences after my parents passed away, and just also transitioning out of a very hardcore religion
Hmm.
that I just didn't think was for me anymore. And so there was a lot of big
Yeah.
changes happening. And I remember I had a friend who said, this was back in 2017, 2018. And, she's like, well, do you ever read anything on Brene Brown? And I'm like, well, of course I know who she is. She's everywhere. Yeah. But she said, have you ever listened to a Super Soul Sunday? I'm like, what's that? And it's Oprah Winfrey Super Soul Sunday. And she just has on people, it's her podcast. And she just has on people who have all of this really great spiritual, enlightening self-improvement stuff. And so I basically just started to walk every day for about an hour. And in that time, I would listen to a Super Soul Sunday. And I can remember specific ones where I would really connect with them and start to want to know more. And so just kind of like similar to what you were saying, someone would be on and I would think, oh, I want to go read this book, or I want to go listen to another podcast, or I want to learn more about what they're talking about. What is this type of healing or this type of self-improvement? And so I just started doing that. And as I did that, I just started to learn more about who I am, and really that there could be happiness in life, and that it didn't have to look the way that it did. And it was scary. It was really scary because it was tons of change and stuff that I would have never done if I hadn't gotten to a point where I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. And I just kept seeing a picture in my mind. And the picture in my mind was me kind of like swimming above the water with my head just above the water and my foot tied to an anchor that was just pulling me down. And I just kept thinking, and I kept hearing the word tethered. And I just kept thinking, my happiness is tethered to other people making decisions for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I have to take this power back. I have to make some decisions. And at first, we tried to make it work and it just was not. And I just couldn't do it anymore. And so decided to end the marriage. And again, like I said, it was super scary. It was not something I wanted to do. I wanted to, I've voiced it before. Pretty much everything that I've ever wanted is, in a family and having a family. And so that was going to crush that. And so I felt a lot of guilt and felt a lot of, what the heck am I going to do? How am I going to take care of 4 kids when I can only make about $13 or $14 an hour? And how is this going to work? I kept saying that a lot. I would almost go to bed almost every single night, kind of terrified or crying. Like, how am I going to do this? Like, how does this work? Even though I feel like I'm doing the right thing and I'm going in the right direction, like, how does this all work out for my highest good is kind of what I was thinking. So even before I, I wasn't leaving for someone else. I wasn't leaving because I had someone else. I wasn't leaving because I wanted to even get married again. Like at the beginning of being single, I was like, I don't ever need to do that again. Like it was just awful. And I just don't ever need to get married again. I don't, I didn't even know if I even wanted to date. It was like, cool, let's hang out, but I don't even know if I want to like date you, and so, but I had been divorced for, I'm trying to think in my head now, at least 2.5 years before I even started to go on the dating app where I met you. And so in that time period, in that time period, whereas your story is a little different, but in that time period, I dated someone for a short amount of time, and I basically figured out that I was dating my ex-husband 2.0. And so I was like, no, we can't do that. But what I learned about that was that I was in the same energy, and that meant it was me, that I was still, I was the point of attraction, and my vibrational frequency was still calling in that toxic behavior. And I could not do that anymore. So I took a good year, almost a year and a half and did not date anyone at all, which for anyone who has not dated like for or been with someone at all in that time period, it really starts to show you a lot of stuff about yourself. Because no one is accountable for your behavior but yourself. You
Right.
can't blame it on someone else.
Yeah.
And so I started to really just look at myself and really decide who I wanted to be and how I was going to construct my life in a way that had balance and that I was good to myself and I loved myself. And, I said it before, but I had that saying, you know, um, I love the world and the world loved me right back. Or, I would substitute the word world and I love my job and my job loved me right back.
Right.
I love the town I live
Mm-hmm.
in and the town I lived in loved me right back. And so I would just throw myself into being happy and finding joy and love. And it wasn't easy.
Yeah. No, it's not.
It wasn't easy at all.
No.
There were a lot of days I was very, very lost and trying to figure out what that meant and looked like. But I knew it was on the right path.
Right.
I knew that it was going to take time.
Yeah.
And that the answer was loving myself.
Yeah. Well, you have a positive vibration that is very attractive to me, and I think it's very natural that comes to you. So I'm not surprised that it held through all of that, because that is the common denominator that really helps people get through tough situations. And when you're trying to find your way out, that really you have to stay positive in the face of everything that life comes at you. I mean, there's always going to be something, and you really have to lean into that. And if that's really who you are, at your depth, then that's something you can tap into. But this doesn't make life easier. But whenever
No.
you can kind of start deciding how you control your energy, and you can start taking things out. A lot of times it's addition by subtraction. Whenever you remove things, like watching the news was something that I stopped doing, and that just immediately made life a little better, because that's, you're getting fear-based information taken out of your existence, and you control your own algorithm
Right.
as a person in real life. And then in your social media platforms, I just got rid of people, family members even, that were always politically charged or always putting just nonsense out there. I just got that out of my algorithm and replaced it with people that were more uplifting or with a positive message. And then, when I'm on social media, at least I'm taking in information that's positive or reinforcing or helping me with my discipline, instead of just, wasteful, hateful rhetoric. So things like that
Well, I
help
mean,
out a ton as well.
it brings up a really good point, because when you make changes in yourself, that's a boundary that you're setting. And, you have all of these people and all of these experiences going along with you. And then when you decide that you're like, no, I'm just not going to do that anymore, because that's just not me, because I'm trying to level up and call in something that I've never called in before. So that means I have to stop doing the exact same things all the time, right? If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to change that. And all of a sudden people are like, wait, we don't like this.
Yeah.
We what happened to full access to you? I don't understand. Or yeah, I mean, there were people that I was very close to, but their behavior was extremely toxic or just so much drama all the time, and I just couldn't do it anymore. It
Yeah.
was, I was trying to focus my energy on myself and my kids and my job,
Yeah.
and then my health and
Yeah.
transforming who I am. And it's like I didn't, you said bandwidth. It's like I just didn't have the energy, the bandwidth for
Yeah.
anything else. And anything that was sucking energy away from me,
Yeah.
I had to just put, a hard boundary, and not because I wanted to come from a place of being mean or
Right.
hating or any of that stuff. Is just like, this is me loving myself more right now.
Right.
Like, I need to show more love to myself, and that means this is a boundary. And so that is definitely another thing. And also, I'm sorry, I can talk the whole time, that.
Well, I have to bring in a point and a message, something that you're talking about with people you surround yourself with. The great and profound philosopher Snoop Dogg once had a video, and he was talking about how whenever he was getting better and
Mhm.
changing, he said, I was going up, and I had to, if my friends or my people around me didn't come up with them, they just fell behind. Like, you're going to have to
Yeah,
come up with me. I'm not coming back down.
right.
So you have to, you have to come, you have
You
to
have to
come with me.
meet me. Yeah,
And sometimes those people just fall off or whatever, and you can change and have the energy to go back to those people and work on that relationship. But if you're trying to make changes and they're not coming with you and they're trying to pull you down, you can't come back down to them. So Snoop Dogg was once again very profound.
I know. He's everywhere. So he's so right. But it goes back to that visualization of me having the anchor, right? And it's like
Right.
I just cut the tether. I was like,
Hmm.
I'm gonna float. Like I'm gonna
Right.
take off. I'm not gonna be pulled down anymore. And along with um having the boundaries and kind of saying no to some things, then it opened up this opportunity to say yes to things that I was, I started all of a sudden to bring in other people into my life, and mainly through work because I have an amazing, people surrounding me, and they're so encouraging and
Yeah.
positive, and it just started to reinforce that, this self love that I was having for myself, that I was going in this right direction, and that there was something else, and that there is more. And it helped me to go, oh my gosh, what is more? What could this look like?
Right.
And having opportunities, come in that were more. And so, um, through my experience of work and just, I'm constantly giving to clients, which I absolutely love. But at the end of the day, I would come home and I would say, it would really be nice if I had my person, somebody who totally understood me and got me and could support, what I do and believed in me, and could also go, "Aw, how's your day?"
Yeah.
And so, um, I started to think, I really want to find my person. And I, all along had been creating this mantra of who I am, but also this person that I wanted in my life. And I would call it my manifest, my manifest. It's a pretty long amount of things that I really wanted to find in a person. And I was very, very specific too. And this would be funny, I would like, maybe somebody would come into my life like just as a coincidence, and I don't even mean like as a date, but even like a client or a friend or something, and I'm like, whoa, this is showing up, and I don't want this, like manipulation or some kind of control or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I got to really refocus my, recalibrate my energy, because I don't want these things coming into my life. And not only that, but I want to be able to like spot them far away and say,
Hmm.
no, this isn't welcome in my life. So, um, somehow you were doing that too before you even knew that you were doing it.
Well, yeah, and I was doing it while I was still married. My ex-wife, she traveled a ton and worked a ton, and so I was pretty much on my own. We had already years past had started sleeping in separate rooms. It's mainly because we had four dogs, but also just the separation. So I had already been kind of fending for myself spiritually, mentally, and in every sense of the word. We were essentially just running a business of the family and our stepson, and um, I was there, throughout my career of restaurant business and all of that. It allowed me to be available to pick our son up and drop him off at school all the time, and always kind of be there for those things, because she would be gone for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. So I was always kind of like, I just got used to being alone and fending for myself
Mhm.
in my own through life, and even hanging out with friends. I had good friends that didn't see her for, when we got divorced, they were like, well, we haven't seen her in 3 years anyway. So I was really kind of on my own in a lot of senses anyway. And um, always held out hope. My parents stayed together, you know, for the entire time. So I didn't divorce wasn't really much of an option for me. I just wanted to work it out, or
Mhm.
and I made the best of it. I just was like, well, we're still, in our careers, we were kind of helping each other, lifting each other up. There was a lot of positives in that sense, but there was no connection otherwise. It was
Right.
really just felt like running a business. So I had been doing all this kind of anyways, and really creating a environment for my own personal growth, um, with the idea of, building an empire someday.
Yeah. Right.
And financially. And so that was all kind of in the works. And then I guess, um, you know, she made the decision for the divorce. And I, like I said, I pretty quickly decided that it was happening for me and not to me. And I started, I was scared too, because she had been paying the bills for 18 years. I was like, that was my biggest fear. I was like, I don't even know how to pay a bill. I don't know.
You're so funny.
Where does it come from? What do you mean you can do it online? Where is my checkbook? I don't know what's going on here. So it was a little, those were my bigger worries, was really like how to get on my own feet with that. But
Sure.
I was confident. I just didn't know where it was going to start and all of that. But 2 weeks later, I was under contract with a condo and uh, moving on.
Yeah.
So I figured things out, and I just kind of decided that I was going to go for it. I was going to, if not now, when. It was, a lot of that. It was like, I'm always wanted to live this place. I'm going to go do it, and I'll figure it out. You know, I just had the confidence to do that. Whereas before I had really started working on myself, it probably would have crushed me. And I
Sure.
don't know where I would be right now if I hadn't done that work and I hadn't really started. So that's kind of, I'm very fortunate that something clicked and I started doing it early.
Yeah. Um, I think too, it's really important to talk about just making sure that, you know, I'm not promoting divorce. Like
Right.
I I never wanted to get divorced. It happened for me too.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned. And in another episode, I definitely have things that I want to share about my thought process of moving through that. But I, you know, definitely tried everything I possibly could to make the marriage work. And then after that didn't happen, I thought, you know, I'd like to be happy. I'd lost my parents. And I think when that happens, you go, I don't really want to spend my whole entire life miserable. It's like we don't really know how long we have here. And I, at the time and still do, like, go be happy. Like, if I'm
Hmm.
not what that is for you, go be happy. Go figure that out for you because um, I think that is part of the reason why we're here, is to find joy, right? So
Yeah.
that that's something I wanted to say. And also, you know, I didn't know how I was going to do anything. I had never had a job a full-time job really. I had a full-time job raising children and um,
And that's tough.
homeschooling and taking care of the home and like all of the extended other things that happen when you have a home and children. But I didn't have something that paid me money. And so it was terrifying to think about how all of this was going to come together and work. And so definitely part of my thought process was like, how can I make money? What
Yeah.
can I do to contribute, not only contribute, but to be the provider? And that's a whole other thing. Like I had no idea. I knew what it felt like to keep humans alive. Like I knew what it felt like to make
Yeah.
sure they were still breathing all through the night when they
Yeah.
were sick. And how do I do all of that and the pressures of that? But I didn't know what it felt like to be the pressures of the provider of the home. And that definitely was a huge eye opener for me to say, wow, this is a lot of pressure. I didn't, and anyone who's had those roles, and not had the other role, you really don't know what it feels like until you're in it. And then you realize, man, this is really difficult
Yeah.
and it's a lot of pressure. And I understand now what that feels like. And so, even through a lot of my anger and rage
Mhm.
even afterwards. It was kind of like, wow, there's some compassion there too of like what this feels like, that I didn't know felt like that before. And so there's so much to work through when you are ending a relationship and then, finding yourself,
Right.
and figuring out who you are. Because when you add other people into, or another person, like into but a lot of times your person may come with little people, when you're adding that into your life, you have to really understand again that you're the point of origin of attracting that. And so a lot of times when we move from one energy into another, we're still in the old energy
Right.
if we haven't done enough work to shift and change who we are. And all of that starts with loving ourselves, figuring out what our place is in this world as far as like, do I believe in a higher power? What does that look like? How do I communicate with other people? How do I, what does a relationship even look like? What do I want in a relationship? What do I want in a person? What do I not want in a person? And
Yeah.
usually we know what we want by knowing what we don't want. Yeah.
Right.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing when I got back into dating, and I wasn't sure. I really thought that I never wanted to get married again. I kind of really just wanted to make sure I was still dateable, and that was the whole reason. I was like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know. I just am I even dateable anymore? And turns out I was pretty good. I was pretty good catch.
You are
Pretty good
great.
catch. But
Yes, you
I
are.
didn't know, and I didn't know what I was. It had been a long time since I had felt intimacy or felt like a loving uh, relationship coming back at me. I had always, I really, obviously, I really wanted it, but and I didn't even know what. I mean, I really didn't know,
Yeah.
and I mean, you know that from dealing with me, uh, but I, but I'm, I went for it, but I didn't really think I ever wanted to get married again, and I really just wanted to make sure I was dateable, and then, I did, I just,
I guess I had other plans.
I got, yeah, I mean, it just worked out, and it was kind of, I didn't have much of a choice. Like life unfolded for me pretty quickly, and it's been amazing, but it's freaking scary for
Yeah,
sure.
it is. And so the next part of what we want to talk about is kind of taking the next step of, okay, I definitely felt like in my life at the time when I was really trying to be really in tune with my intuition and myself and listening for any kind of next steps that I feel like, is there for all of us if we're really listening. How do you do that? What's next? Do you go on a dating app? And that wasn't really my first step. I told a lot of people I'm ready to date. Like I'm ready.
Yeah,
If you, people that I loved and trusted, if you know anyone, like, because that's really the best way, I feel like, but it just doesn't happen that way all the time.
yeah,
And a lot of the really great people are already married, and so
yeah,
that wasn't something I was interested in at all. Um, and then taking steps to figure out how to do all of that. And now you're presenting yourself to the whole world basically on this little tiny,
yeah,
screen. And
yeah.
the first time I accidentally swiped yes on somebody, I threw the phone across the room because I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to him. I don't know. And my friend Tammy was on the phone with me, and she's like, I could hear her across the room, Briggs, pick up the phone. Like, what did you do? But I just like, I was terrified. I'm like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? What happened? So anyway, yeah, we're gonna tell you all that. And so
Yeah, I can see that happening.
yeah, so anyway, we hope this has been helpful in some way. And it's a journey. It's all part of self-discovery and self-love and understanding self
Yeah,
more. And I feel like it's a really great place to start since you're going to be adding, your person and probably other people that come along with your person.
Yeah, that's a whole episode on itself of joining another family and taking that into account, and in our instance for sure of, it's not just about us. It's, there's a lot of other factors involved. So, I mean, that could be a whole thing.
That could be a whole thing,
Yeah.
for sure. But yes, so we hope you'll join us on the next Brooks and Paul Heal This and our journey, and we hope to see you soon. See ya.
Bye.